Hello and welcome to the second episode of Outside the Perimeter. This is the place where we are speaking to experts and innovators from across the cybersecurity space, learn about what they're getting up to, new things within the industry. So if you're responsible for cybersecurity and IT, then hopefully this is the place for you. I'm David Taylor, Managing Director and Founder of Aruga Cyber, and today I've got two guests that I'm really excited to speak to. So we've got Poole and Ollie Fletcher. Both are co-founders of Strand Intelligence. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, David. Really glad to be here.
Hey, David. Thank you for having us on.
Yep, thank you very much for joining me. I've obviously known you guys for a little while, and Strand looks like it's going from strength to strength. You've been up to some really good stuff, which we'll get into shortly. But what we'd like to do with all the guests at the start is, do you just want to give us a quick 60-second overview of who you are, how you ended up at Strand, what you've done in the past, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. I'll kick us off. So I'm Poole. I'm the technical co-founder here at Strand, so the technical side of the Ollie and Will duo that you've got on the podcast today. I have been essentially in the reactive side of cybersecurity for just over the last decade. Started off at the Information Commissioner's Office doing regulatory investigations. So it's a long way of saying that I was just very unpopular for about 5 or 6 years, investigating businesses that have had cybersecurity incidents under the GDPR, which I'm sure everybody is thrilled to be hearing about once again, and then moved into frontline cyber incident response. So actually helping businesses rather than regulating against them, helping them get back on their feet after ransomware incidents, email compromises, phishing attacks, and basically everything in between. So understanding how the incidents happened and how the business can get back up and running and make the incident an unhappy memory as quickly and as safely as possible.
Cool. Thanks very much. Over to you, Ollie.
Great, that leaves me. So I'm the commercial half of the Will and Ollie duo, as will now be known as. So my background, I worked in consulting in process engineering, but had a kind of knack for commercials. So was running a business unit within a corporate consultancy for a few years as a commercial director. Prior to this, and then fate changed early last year, and now I have got into business with my co-founder, the technical prowess, and my neighbour, Poole.
Yeah, great. So as I said, I'm really impressed with Strand and what you're doing. Like I've seen the platform and everything. I think it's brilliant. Do you want to just give the listeners an overview of what Strand is and why you decided to develop it? And then we can maybe go into where the company's going, because we've just seen you've just had a round of investment. So congratulations on that. It's great to see.
Thank you very much. So at its core, Strand is really a digital forensics and incident response platform. Essentially what we saw is that there has been many, many years of some really awesome advancements in stopping businesses from having cyber attacks. You've got all of your kind of fancy EDRs, or endpoint detection and response. You've got these amazing SIEMs systems and countless other acronyms that I think even now I'm losing track of them at this point. And businesses are investing in them, especially big businesses and enterprises investing heavily in cybersecurity to stop incidents taking place. And yet incidents are happening more often than ever. You look at the trend of ransomware attacks and essentially any other area of cyber incidents, and it goes up year on year. What we realize is that whilst the proactive side of cybersecurity is super important, there is a real lack of tooling available in the reactive side. So what do you do when you have a pretty bad day and realize that a cyber incident has taken place? Whether that is, there's the start of some bad activity, whether it is threat actor has just gained access to your systems and you've got alerts being fired by all of those good proactive tools, right the way through to your catastrophic situations like a ransomware attack bringing a business to its knees. That was still an extremely manual process. You've got amazing AI and automation at the front end of cybersecurity, and there was very, very little at the back end when things do go wrong. And that's the moment that we built Strand for, is to help organizations, security teams and incident response teams deliver much faster responses, get to the real heart of how an incident has happened, what data has been impacted, and what they need to do next in kind of seconds and minutes, rather than the days, weeks, and sometimes even months that it can take when you're dealing with it the good old-fashioned way.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what is the plan for Strand now? Like I said, we've just seen you've just had a round of investment, so that's obviously going to propel your kind of growth. What are your immediate plans with the investment?
I can take this. So we're investing heavily in the team, really, David. Initially, what we did was we planned of how we would go to market. So we were trying to look at how this tool could be used, whether it was going to be used by MSPs, whether it was going to be used by enterprises. And what we needed to work out was how much can you helpfully automate in a response situation, and how much are you kind of like over-egging actually what needs nuance and specialism. And so where we landed, and most of our customer base is the actual forensic specialists. Strand's designed to essentially make the bulk of the analysis simpler and faster, carry out some of that legwork, and actually leave the specialists to do that assurance and to do that quality checking and that engagement with the customer, wrap a blanket around them on their day. They're having their worst day. So the plan for growing is essentially to continue down that track. So we've now kind of validated that across a number of different customers today. So really we want to grow and become that expedient service for DFIR providers to provide to their customers whilst using the software at Strand.
Brilliant. So you've actually got incident responders and incident response companies using the Strand software to aid in their investigations currently?
Lots.
That's great. So let's go back into like the actual incident response stuff. And this is kind of an open question for both of you, but Will, if we just come to you first, because you've obviously been parachuted into numerous places where, as you put it, they're having the worst day. So do you want to just describe what that kind of moment's like when you're getting called into a business? I imagine they're all different, but what is it like walking through the door when that's happening to a company? What are some of the things that businesses don't realise when they're in that moment that are quite common?
So I think that kind of maybe 9 times out of 10, it's absolute chaos. What people I think don't expect when it comes to a cyber incident, because cybersecurity broadly, when you're in kind of peacetime and you're not under an attack and you're essentially just dealing with your business day to day, it's actually, for I think most business leaders, just kind of a boring annoyance that they just have to spend money on and don't see kind of the reward coming back from it because they haven't had an incident, and no news is good news essentially when you're spending money on cybersecurity. But when an incident does actually take place, especially a really critical incident like a ransomware attack, it's a very emotional event. The business leaders are essentially seeing stuff that they have worked on and put their blood, sweat and tears into collapse in front of their eyes. And if they don't have the right kind of backups and recovery processes and haven't planned for that moment, it can essentially be an existential threat to the business that they may not recover from. It's very obvious when we go into a business that has prepared for that moment. You hope that they've not been through it before. Like, this isn't something you need to really be developing expertise in as a business owner, we hope anyway, but at least kind of prepared for it, thought about it, and really focus on what happens if we end up in this scenario, versus those businesses that go, we've spent £300 quid a month on EDR and now it's never going to happen to us. That emotion is obviously quite challenging to deal with as an incident responder. There's a lot of super technical incident responders out there who are exceptional at their jobs. But maybe the hardest part is actually just handling the clients. You see tears, you see very, very emotional business leaders and people who essentially just want their business to get back up and running. They just want the problem fixed and sorted. Quite often those opening hours of the engagement are actually just walking them through what this process is going to look like, setting those expectations and letting them know that the investigation is absolutely paramount. We go diving in and straight to putting backups in place and restoring data onto systems. That threat actor is still going to be there. They're going to get back in exactly how they got in before until we understand how they did that and what they've left behind. Those kind of backdoors, to use the terminology that people seem to love. We can't go into that recovery process. There's a sequence of steps that the responders need to go through, and for very, very good reason. So that's kind of point one. I think the second point, and it again goes to the kind of planning that we as cybersecurity specialists will always push on organizations, make sure that the first time you're thinking about an incident response is not when you are in an incident response, is the fact that the kind of decisions that you make under fire in split second, very, very stressful scenarios during those first kind of hours and days of an incident will be analysed and scrutinised for months by a number of different external parties, whether that's my good old friends at the regulator, whether that is customers who are going to come after you for kind of breach of contract because your services have gone down, whether it is consumers that are using your platform or your service or whatever it is that's been impacted. They have perfect hindsight when they are reviewing the decisions you made, the steps that you took. You do not. You've got to make them in high pressure, high risk situation without all of the kind of complete information that you'd like to have. And again, I want to sound like a broken record. The only way really to balance the scales versus the people that are going to kind of judge you from the decisions you make and you who are making them in a split second is to think about them beforehand. Use all of this time where you're not having an incident to actually think about what you would do, get the right tools in place, the right systems in place, and really understand how you're going to get back up and running when an incident does take place. Where is your data? What are the most important systems? And what do you do first, second, and third?
Yeah, cool. So can you see a marked difference then when you go into an organization? I'm not talking about tech here now, just talking about preparation. So people who have got the incident response plans, they're going through them manually, they're doing tabletop exercises. Like, can you actually see that making a difference when you're out in the field?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest indicators I think that we see is when we first go in, have they got the right people on the call? When you're an incident responder going into these scenarios, you need people that understand the technical side of the organization, like what do their servers do, whereabouts are they, how are they configured, what software are they running, and all that kind of stuff. And you also need authority, somebody that can make a decision. You're not, if you have a kind of critical ransomware attack, going to get everything back up and running all at once. Quite often we need to prioritize, and it's so often that you go into a situation, especially a business that hasn't done the tabletop exercises and considered all of the different impacts of an incident, when you go, okay, where should we begin? Like, if we want to get your business back up to 20% operation, which systems do you need? And the finance team will say, well, we need the finance systems. And the marketing team will say, well, we need the marketing systems. And the developers will say, oh, well, we need all of our development machines. Who's right? Like, actually, what is critical to get the kind of almost minimum viable business back up and running? Is always super valuable to know that not many businesses actually think about ahead of time. Compare that to the businesses that have been through this all the time. They've been run through a really, really good tabletop exercise. They put time and investment into thinking about their incident response, and they make the incident responders' lives much easier. And ultimately, everything flows downstream from that in the speed that the recovery can take place and the quality of the service that they can receive from whoever is helping them through the incident response.
Yeah, cool. Good answer. I suppose it shows that you don't have to be spending a lot of money on having all the best fancy tools and stuff. Just being prepared is one of the best things that you can do in the worst moments. But going on to the tools, obviously we spoke before we decided to do the podcast about what we were going to talk about and stuff like that. And a common theme was that technology is moving quite fast, as everybody knows, and we've already just been through some of the acronyms like EDRs, SIEM platforms, and all of that kind of stuff. But we did discuss how the incident response process hasn't really changed over the last 10 years. Do you want to just give a bit of information on that and explain why you think that is and what impact that's having on businesses?
Yes. So I think from my perspective, and I would love to hear Ollie's view on this as well, is that it's where the money is. It's a very natural human thing to want to stop an incident from taking place and never find yourself in that scenario. So businesses will naturally, as they should, spend a lot of their time and effort and finances thinking about how do we actually just never find ourselves in that scenario. I think the recognition that more incidents are taking place and that this is an existential risk and actually you need investment on both sides of the coin is becoming more focused on in the kind of general consciousness of businesses at the moment, likely because there was a number of very highly reported on, should we say, cyber incidents over the course of last year that have made companies realise actually, even if you are a large food supplier, for example, completely hypothetical example, you can spend all of the money in the world on your prevention and your detection. There is still a likelihood that you're going to have an incident at some point during your business life cycle, and it's going to cost you an awful lot more than all of the money you spent on the preventative measures combined. So that's where the money was, it's where the focus was, it's what businesses want, rightly, never have an incident. And now I think the approach is changing to recognise that we aren't outpacing the threat actors, we aren't getting ahead of them, and we've been trying to do that for many, many years. So there needs to now be an appropriate kind of balance of prevention, but also how do we respond, how do we get them out of the system, and how do we make sure when that day comes, it isn't the end of the business and we can reliably bounce back and crack on providing value to our customers and consumers.
Yeah, cool. Are you seeing similar thing from the kind of the commercial side, Ollie?
Yeah, so I was going to suggest something that I think we've seen a lot over the last year. We've talked a little bit about how the fact incidents are growing in the size of impact and frequency. Both are growing year on year. It doesn't mean that we don't need our prevention, but it does mean that we need to kind of position ourselves as cyber attack ready. I think something that we've seen across the IR industry is actually that there has historically been heroes, so to speak, in the game, where actually it's been a human-led response process to a human-led attack process, where actually there have been some big names in the industry where you know that the X name from X organization is going to come in and they're going to do a really magnificent job. What we've speculated over the last few years is that actually the specialism in terms of talent, filling up those specialist roles is becoming harder and harder because the demand is growing. And actually now we're seeing threat actors move to, automated infiltration techniques. There's talk of and the start of malware starting to automate internally, although we've not seen that huge amounts just yet, but definitely getting in the door is an automated process. And I think that is leading to more rapid attacks. And I think really the need for, leveraging automation comes from the fact that actually those specialists or those heroes of specialists in that culture are less and less accessible as this whole thing scales. So really what we're talking about is just a degree of innovation that I think has been overdue based on some of those cultural factors. It's not about replacing at all. It's actually about supercharging and making sure that those people and those teams can cover more and do more across the wider economy.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And we see the exact same from our kind of side of the table as well. So within the SOC, using a lot of automation and AI and stuff now, I think everybody's got to be doing that because it's a lot faster, it's a lot more efficient. And as you say, it's supercharging the teams that are already there because talent is really hard to find, especially top tier talent. So yeah, great point. One thing I want to get onto is one of my favourite topics at the moment, which is cyber insurance. I know you guys will have done a lot of work with insurers and stuff like that because of the nature of what you do. But what I hear is, and I've seen it in businesses myself when I've gone in doing consultancy and stuff, is that businesses will have a cyber insurance policy and they just presume that because that's in place that they're absolutely covered when something happens. What's your kind of take on that, and how do you see that when you're actually going into an incident, and what should business or cybersecurity IT leaders have in mind or questions they should be asking when they're looking for a cyber?
It's a good question. I think that the short answer is that cyber insurance is awesome. Used right, there is an incredible number of really, really great cyber insurers out there delivering some awesome value, especially in the event of an incident. Again, it can be a mentality thing. If you don't have an incident, you're like, oh, why are we paying for cyber insurance for another year? Let me tell you, if an incident does happen, having access to the experts that you need at the speed that you can with the pre-existing relationships your insurer will have with them is invaluable at the speed of the response that you're going to receive. With that said, there is some like gotchas, as people on podcasts love to hear. The first is like, what are the requirements of the policy? The amount of times we see businesses taking them out and making it a financial decision that, for example, the CFO makes, rather than something that the IT or the security team are involved in, is massive. Because they'll see, for example, this insurance policy requires that we have multi-factor authentication. And the CFO will go, we have multi-factor authentication. That's that annoying thing on my phone that I have to type in every morning to sign into my email account. So they tick yes. But actually what the policy is saying is not do you have access for your emails, but also do you have it on your VPN when you're signing into the corporate network? Do you have it when you're moving between the internal systems? Do your IT admins use MFA when they sign onto your servers to actually conduct work? And your IT and security team, if they're involved in the decision-making process, can say, actually, we don't have this. We have MFA here. We don't have it here and everywhere else that it needs to be under this policy. That's kind of point one, is just get the security and the IT teams involved in that decision-making process so you don't get stung at the end of it. The other is it's still worthwhile, and we see businesses make this decision a lot where they go, our insurance company is, when we call them up and say we have an incident, are going to bring an incident response team in. Yeah. That does not mean that it is not worthwhile having a relationship with an incident response team, because they are going to come in completely blind to you, your business, your ways of working, the importance of your systems, and all of this good stuff in the event that you do call your insurer up and they just kind of send one of their incident response teams in. If you can develop a relationship with one of those incident response teams that your insurer kind of pre-approves, so they know you, they maybe have like dormant accounts in your environment that are ready to be activated when instant response is necessary. Maybe they have been had a walkthrough of your infrastructure and been provided with your kind of infrastructure map. It just means that first hour, 2 hour of an incident is not bringing them up to speed. They're ready to hit the ground running. And again, that has massive kind of downstream impacts as you look at the speed at which businesses want to get back up and running. And the very, very last thing that I would say is look at when coverage kind of gets approved as part of the insurance policy. Awful lot of insurers are awesome at this, where they essentially go, you're having an instant response. We recognize that you are under duress here, essentially. So we're going to give you kind of approval now. The instant response team are going to come in. you are going to get help immediately, and we can kind of figure out coverage and things like that in the background. There are some insurers out there where they don't do that. Essentially, you pay for the incident response, and only at the very end of the process do you get told, is this going to be covered or not, quite often based on the incident responder's findings. This attack happened because they didn't actually have multi-factor authentication in this place. So you kind of, it's one less thing to worry about, and it's quite a big one less thing to worry about. If you know that you're going to, when an incident happens, we essentially go, don't worry about it, we're bringing the people in and you're covered, versus being told that once you've spent many tens of thousands of pounds on this incident response company, only for their findings to say you didn't have this in place, and the insurer to deny your claim off the back of that.
Yeah, no, good point. So do you think it's worthwhile businesses having incident response retainers in place as well as having cyber insurance for that kind of the pre-stuff? So going through your business, understanding the tech you're using, how the business operates and things like that.
I think so, yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be we will have you there in the event that an incident takes place, because your insurer is going to kind of cover that. It's extremely useful to have them in because they have the experience of what it looks like and what to do and how best to prepare, to run your tabletop exercises, to run your preparation, to do basically a little bit of a health check of your environment so that they understand it and can come in with knowledge ahead of time. So, if you've got a great insurance policy and you're happy that it covers you, leave the paying of the incident response teams to the insurance company, but get them up to speed first. I guess is a really, really nice and easy, low cost, low risk way of just ensuring that you have the right information and know the people that are going to be in the room when you do have that instant response. It's a stressful period of time to be trying to get to know someone.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like the point you said about bringing IT in when you're taking out these policies and things. I mean, to us, we work in tech, it probably seems obvious, but I suppose to a business that doesn't, it's not. Because I've seen it ourselves when we've gone in and done consultancy and things. We've been in a particular business recently where we went in and they had a cybersecurity policy in place that clearly the board or the CFO or whatever put in place, thinking it was the right thing to do. But based on what we saw when we were doing the audit and the gap analysis, there's absolutely no way on earth that any cyber insurance policy would have paid out if they'd had some kind of breach. So it's a really, really good point. Have you got anything you want to add to that from like a commercial angle, Ollie, with what you're seeing working with insurers?
So just one thing that I've seen from our customers' side, if you're thinking about, well, I'm a small business and actually economically I've bought cyber insurance, why would I have an IR retainer instead, or as well as, apologies. One of the things that I've seen catch out customers is the excess. So where you have, say, 30, 40 grand excess on your cyber insurance, and actually the customer I'm thinking of ended up having quite a few incidents in year, and actually ended up being 200-300 grand down by the end of the year. So I think a good way to weigh it up is actually if you can get a reasonable and affordable IR retainer, where actually if you're dealing with a smaller incident, can allow you to resolve the incident in-house and below your excess, you're going to save yourself some hassle. And I think economically that works out. You need to review your business, you need to review the risk. And really your insurance is there as well. If you have something huge happen, then those guys are going to cover your service downtime. They're going to cover all your recovery costs. But actually there's a whole plethora of incidents that can happen to you that all require some degree of, ensuring the correct recovery. So a good thing to look at. Also worth checking if it's per incident or if you've got it as part of your annual base, because that was the thing that stung some of the guys we've worked with.
Yeah, it sounds like the more you unpack it and look into it, something that seems so like obvious or easy could actually be a massive can of worms, and it's something that you definitely need to work at to get right. But if we go back to kind of dealing with incidents and things now, and like we talked about insurance, and let's say that you're in an incident now and an incident responder is using the Strand technology. We kind of mentioned a couple of questions ago that you're using AI and automation, and as everybody is now, as I said, we're building it into the SOC at Aruga, but I'm really interested, and I'm sure the listeners will be, to understand how you're actually using that within Strand. So how is it making dealing with an incident more efficient and more effective?
Yeah, so this wouldn't be a technology podcast in 2026 if we didn't use the word agentic at some point, right? So I'll see how many times I can fit it in. So somebody give a scorecard of how many times I say it over the course of this now. Try keep another 3. So the elephant in the room on our side is that you can't, and Don't get me wrong, I'd love it if we could. Make my life an awful lot easier. Take the vast amounts of data that are required to do an incident response. So all of your like server logs, all of the data that you're gathering from your cloud environments, all of this information that incident responders looked at, stick it into ChatGPT and go, how did this incident happen? It's too much information. You're asking it to look for a needle in a haystack, and they aren't very good at that. Don't know how kind of intelligent or smart they're getting, and they're getting really, really good. They just can't handle that volume of data. So the approach that we take is to essentially use AI. We use it extensively, but we use it as sparingly as possible. There is a lot of really well-defined, really well-used methods in cybersecurity, which you'll kind of be aware of. I'm sure you use them in your SOC, like kind of Yara rules and Sigma rules and statistical analysis and anomaly detection. All of these things are classics for a reason. It's because they work, and they're really good at detecting when activity takes place that shouldn't be there, or when a file might be malicious. All of this stuff you don't want to replace with AI. You will find it is a lot more expensive if you do, and it will also be a lot less accurate, and it's much riskier, because at least with your static rules and when we're applying statistical analysis, we're getting the same results every time. AI might say one thing one time and a different thing the other. So the approach that we take is to essentially gather all of the evidence as a manual incident responder or a forensic analysis would, get it into one place, like a database where it can be actually analyzed, and then run over the classic tool sets. So your statistical analysis, your anomaly detection. AI at this point is relaxing, not being involved, sat on the bench, so to speak. And we use those tools and a lot of algorithms that we built internally to essentially get that data down to high signal stuff of these sequences of actions could be malicious. This sequence of action looks benign. This is definitely threat actor activity. And then the AI is essentially used to investigate the kind of gaps between those threads, or those strands, if you will, which is a slightly on the nose reference to what we refer to them internally, to essentially say, okay, our deterministic and our statistical systems have gone, these kind of three groups of activity look malicious to me. Can the AI then go and say, oh, actually, yeah, we can actually see that these two are linked because the user went from this place to this place. Can we look around them to figure out how they happened? Did a user download something from the internet and double click a file, which has triggered malware being deployed, or is a threat actor coming in via the VPN and has access to the whole network? How are they kind of chronologically linked together, and what can we see in the surrounding activity that may also be malicious activity? So essentially, to kind of summarize, our agentic approach is not to just throw data at an AI and hope that it looks in the right place and finds the right information. It's to run a load of deterministic, good old-fashioned anomaly detection systems up front and let the AI reason in the gaps and over that high signal data to essentially write what your analyst sees, what your client sees, and ultimately what you convey to the board on how the incident is taking place.
Yeah, and I suppose throwing mass amounts of data into some AI agent looking for a needle in a haystack is going to be an expensive haystack, isn't it? Like, it costs an absolute fortune in tokens and things like that.
Yes, certainly does. Certainly does. It's slow too. If you use like the frontier language models, they like to think and they like to really take their time over these problems. At that point, you kind of lose the benefits of the automation upfront, especially when it's costing you what it would cost a human analyst, and that person isn't going to make all the assumptions that the AI is going to make. So our job really at Strand, when we're doing our engineering, is to ensure that when we feed data into the AI, it is authentic. We can actually tie it back to a specific piece of evidence. It is already very high signal, so we've got rid of as much noise as possible. We've got rid of essentially anything that we don't believe that is relevant for the AI to look at, and it's just feeding it things that are maybe we're unsure of, maybe are kind of falling through the gaps, and can ask it questions like, what do you think of this? What activity happened around it? And I let it actually investigate a particular moment or a particular set of evidence rather than throwing everything at it and wishing it the best.
Yeah, cool. We've absolutely flown through this, to be fair. I had loads more questions I want to ask you, but we've kind of reaching the half an hour mark already. So what we'll do is we'll change pace a little bit. And what I like to do with guests is just fire some quick fire questions at them. So there's obviously no right or wrong answer. So feel free to, whoever wants to answer, and we'll see where we go. So first one is, what is the biggest myth in cybersecurity?
Done a lot of talking, so I'll let Ollie take that one.
What's the biggest myth in cybersecurity right now? So I think the biggest myth is the fact you can automate everything. So we focus really, really hard on automating things that can be automated with minimal risk profile to the actual outcomes and resolution of the situation. I think everyone is talking about doing things autonomously, and I think there is this idea, maybe from slightly less practitioner-led minds, that everything is going to be automated. There's going to be just a portal, and it's just going to work seamlessly with no staff. It's not true. It's not going to exist. We already know that from having built this, but actually what is going to exist is automation in the right places to enable better outcomes and still bring in your specialisms and your reviews and your approvals at the times that are appropriate for whatever activity.
That's actually a very good answer. Next one is one that I always like to ask because the answers vary quite a lot. But what would you say is the most overrated framework?
Oof.
Controversial.
GDPR.
There we go.
Don't leave that in.
And then final one, because we're running out of time, is what is one thing that every business should do the moment they suspect they're having a breach? Call Strand.
Yeah, I think get the right people involved is number one, 100%. Get experts in the room as quickly as you possibly can. The slightly longer answer to that is that there's a few, I guess, like kind of things that I would always say to an organization if I was giving them like preemptive advice for their incidents. The first is isolate, don't shut down. We so often see organizations press that big red panic button and shut all of their systems off. You lose quite a lot of evidence when you do that, and you can ultimately make the investigation harder depending on the type of systems. Things like firewalls and hypervisors are the kind of key big ones there. If you turn them off, we lose so much. So isolate things, cut them off from the network, pull the cable that's giving it internet access out the back of them if you need to. Try not to shut them down. That isn't a never shut them down. If you're in a really, really bad scenario and that's the only way of keeping your data safe, absolutely. But isolate, don't shut down is a big one. Get the experts in the room as quickly as possible. And broadly, we've got quite a lot of materials on the mistakes that we see businesses make in that first hour that they pay for in a week later and a month later as the incident response progresses. So just go and read as much as you can about those kind of areas and prepare for that moment. So you're acting on a playbook when the incident happens, not acting on instinct.
Yeah, cool, brilliant. The whole shutting down the device, you hear that everywhere. Like when we do tabletop exercises with businesses and things like that as well, one of the first things they often say is, we'll just turn everything off. And obviously that's not the right thing to do. But we have run out of time now. So what we'll do is we'll put your contact details and everything up on LinkedIn and YouTube and everything. But if you just want to let people know where it is they can find you, should they go to LinkedIn, follow Strand, or like website and stuff like that? What's the best way for people to get in touch?
I'll rattle it off. It's LinkedIn/Strand Intelligence. It's strandintelligence.com. Like Will said, we've got loads of generally helpful information available online, and always around to have a chat about the value that good incident response and preparedness can give you.
Brill. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks very much for coming on. It was a really good conversation. I could probably speak about this for hours. The time's absolutely flown by, but it's really eye-opening. It's great to see what you guys are doing at Strand, so wish you all the best for the future with your new investment, growing your team and stuff like that. So everybody follow Strand and keep an eye on those guys. And similar with us, like and follow Aruga Cyber on LinkedIn and YouTube, and subscribe to the latest episodes in our newsletter. But until next time, I'm David Taylor, and thanks for being outside the perimeter.